Okay, I'm Bob Bigger from Gastonia, North Carolina, and I've had two wonderful careers. One career was radio broadcasting and some news covering and news reporting a little bit later, but I think probably a good place to start would be what piqued my interest in going into radio broadcasting. There was a man on Charlotte Radio, Charlotte, North Carolina, WAYS, Big Ways. His name was Jack Gale, is Jack Gale. Jack's still alive and well in Florida. But I, as a teenager in the 1960s, I'm talking about around the 7th and 8th grade, during lonely summers, I would listen to Jack Gale every day. And he had a way about him that could make anybody laugh. He had funny little characters and just all kinds of little gags and tricks that he did to make people laugh. And he filled some many lonely hours for me. I used to lie under my bed for some reason and listen to a little transistor radio. And I fell in love with the music of the 60s, Herman's Hermits, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, the Byrds, the Animals, the Turtles, the whole musical menagerie of pop groups. And I said, someday I would like to go into radio broadcasting, and I would love to be able to make people laugh just the way Jack Gale has made me laugh. And I went through high school. In fact, one photograph that would probably be good to be included would be one of me with a chalkboard behind me. And on it says, Late News with Bob Bigger. And I'm sitting there with a little pipe, that's my microphone, and I'm reading the news. So I think that indicated that I knew very early in life what I really wanted to do. And life followed a natural course. I somehow ended up in radio. A friend of mine called me at my then fiance's home and said, look, you're going to Carolina School of Broadcasting in Charlotte. We have an internship open at WGNC AM and FM. Would you like to have it? I said, yeah. So, in other words, I didn't have to go to radio. Radio came to me. And that was October 1972 that I started working as an intern at WGNC. Some months later, Randy Jenkins, my mentor and friend and trainer, took a job at Whammy Radio, the country radio station in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I took his position, and I spent 10 years at WGNC. That's when I said, hey, I'm in a perfect position to meet and interview my favorite celebrities. My first interview was from Goldfinger, Harold Oddjob Sakata. Now we're talking about the very muscular Hawaiian man. He was there wearing a Hawaii. He was Oddjob. He had the derby with the razor on the edge, and he had it with him, and he dropped it. Oh, I didn't mean to, but he dropped it on the radio console, and he said, this is the hat. I carry it with me because it opens conversations. It is the same one that I used in Goldfinger. And so Harold Oddjob Sakata was my first radio interview. And the man who brought him to the radio station to promote his movie Impulse was a man who had been a producer for a lot of the Boris Karloff horror movies, Frankenstein movies. And I mentioned one to him, and I said, I saw it on television the other night, and I said, Boris Karloff said, don't be a fool, friend Daniel, I'll make you an Adonis. And he said, oh yes, I remember that, and he mentioned the title, and he said, I produced that film. So that was quite a way to get your feet wet. And I thought, man, a movie star, a very essential part of a James Bond, Sean Connery action movie And then with him, I got to meet the man who produced a lot of those classic films. Well, as time went on, I had a Saturday night country music radio show, the Bob Bigger broadcast. And hey, Willie Nelson's coming to the Charlotte Coliseum. Well, I tried my best to get it set up, but I never could. So I went ahead and bought tickets, 2 tickets, which I think they were the astronomical price in 1976 of $15, just in case I couldn't get a backstage pass. So my friend John Taylor, high school photography student, we went over on May 16th, 1976, and I've got that some photos from that night. And it didn't look like we were going to get the interview because someone said, well, you know, Willie was searched for drugs a couple of weeks ago. And he said, I doubt you're going to get an interview. But he said, and I know you're not going to get up there with that camera. And I thought, oh, heck. But we waited, and then the guy says, hey, man, ticket sales are off. Could you get us some publicity on your radio station? I said, yeah. So I called and I said, promote Willie Nelson's Charlotte concert tonight. I said, Poco is opening the Flying Burrito Brothers, all of whom I met. But anyway, the guy's name was Ron Sunshine, the promoter. And I managed to get up on the bus with the help of a guy named Bo, who handled concessions. And he introduced me to Paul English, one of Willie's 2 drummers. He looked like the devil. And Willie had written a song about him called The Devil in a Sleeping Bag, and You Look Like the Devil. So we got up on the bus, and I interviewed Paul English. Willie, of course, we were told he was not there. And Willie, there were some women on the bus asking about T-shirts and so forth. Paul English leaned over and says, hey, Bob, said, Willie's back there, come on back. So I got John, we went to the back, and there was Willie with his bandana reading the National Enquirer. So I was so nervous that all my questions that I had formulated and was ready to ask went out the window. And so I kind of stumbled around a little bit embarrassingly. And Ray Crisp was a friend of mine. He was a country music fiddle player on the Grand Ole Opry who was good friends with Willie and played with Willie as part of Ray Price's Cherokee Cowboys many, many years ago, back in the 60s. And I remember I said, hey, Willie, before we turn the tape off, let's say hello together to one of the truest friends a man could ever have, and certainly one of the best fiddle players who ever rosined up a boat, Ray Crisp. And Willie grabbed the microphone out of my hand. He said, hey, yeah, be sure. Hey, Ray, if you're out there, pal, come see me. So that was my, I guess you would say, early introduction to big-time interviewing. And through the years, there were interviews with Crystal Gale, George Jones, twice Hank Williams Jr. Waylon Jennings would not do an interview. At the radio station, I interviewed David Carradine, the great actor and son of the legendary actor John Carradine. And of course, David had portrayed Shane on television, the Western, and he was also in Kung Fu. He was in Kung Fu at the time of the interview, and of course later Kill Bill. Marvelous actor, bit of a strange person. He was alternately friendly and sarcastic, but it was a great honor. And I remember when he left, he flashed this beautiful, beautiful Hollywood perfect teeth smile, and it just radiated, and I thought, that's why this guy's a movie star. That disarming smile.